Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Town of Auburn Planning Board meeting of Tuesday, July 24th, 2018, now called to order at approximately 7 p.m. This meeting is being recorded and broadcasted live via local access programming. Is there anyone here in the audience tonight that is recording tonight's meeting? There being none, at this time I would like to remind the audience, if there being none, please rise and join us in a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, I would like to remind the audience, applicants, town administration, and each of the planning board members to please refrain from asking questions in regards to all matters discussed this evening without first being granted my consent. At this time, I'll turn the meeting over to our planner because we've got some articles of reorganization and appointments and some other messages.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One thing I'd like to note at the beginning of this agenda is we had a staffing error on our agenda, and one of the continued hearings from our last public meeting was not added to the agenda. That's our 188 Oxford Street North site plan approval project for First Worcester's Pentecostal Church of God's application. I've spoken to that applicant. He signed a continuance form for us for the August 14th meeting anyways. Because it did not make the agenda, we can't even vote to continue it or take any action on it otherwise. But having received a written consent to continue anyways from the applicant covers us on both ends. So that item will not be heard this evening. The second thing I'd like to bring up is just to clean up our CMRPC delegates for nominations for delegate and for resident rep. The board and the town manager are responsible collectively for 4 appointments. One of them has to be a planning board member, and 2 of them are residents, and then 1 is an alternate resident. The board is responsible to nominate 1 delegate member, which I believe Mr. Wren is prepared to serve as, and then 1 resident rep, which our staff assistant, Rachel Pressey, would like to serve as. So just need nominations and votes for each of those folks. So I'll call for a nomination for CMRPC's planning board delegate.
I'll make a nomination of Scott as the CMRPC planning board delegate.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote. Okay. And for CMRPC's resident rep?
I'll nominate Rachel Pressey.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. There's a vote. Thank you. So for reorganization that was tabled over from our last agenda, I'm looking for nominations for chairman and vice chairman, and we'll start first with a nomination for chairperson.
I nominate Ronnie Brooks for chair.
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
There's a vote. We're looking for nominations for vice chairperson.
I'll nominate Wendy as vice chairman.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There's a vote. Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. Chairmanship is yours.
First item on the agenda is an A&R plan at 109 to 113 Elm Street for Walter Koza.
Mr. Chairman, I do not see Mr. Koza here today, but I'll refresh the board on what this is. This was a hammerhead lot application that was approved by the board a couple of months ago. Mr. Koza did submit, let me back up for a second. His decision needed to be recorded at the Worcester Registry of Deeds and then added to a Mylar before our signatures. He did produce that Mylar for us, but there were some inconsistencies with the plan between both Auburn's planner and the Millbury planner in regards to the coordinate system and the numbering of the new addresses.
You can explain that Millbury had to be part of it too.
Correct. So what happened was Millbury required using a different coordinate system, the datum for the survey, and they have now already met and signed this Mylar. And since Millbury was on board with this, all I needed to see were the addresses added to the plan, which I am satisfied with. Otherwise, the plan reflects everything that we have already voted for at our previous meeting.
And you have the Mylars.
I have the Mylar and 4 copies for
And
us to
those are
sign.
Mylars that Millbury's also signed.
The copies are only our signatures. The Mylar has Millbury's
Millbury and
signature.
us.
So I just want to put to the board's attention the signature bars on these plans are at the bottom of the page for Auburn's board. And I apologize for this not getting into your packets, but I assure you this is not a new application, so I felt comfortable to put it before you this evening.
So we're gonna endorse.
Just need a motion to endorse.
Do we have a motion to endorse?
Motion to endorse the A and R
Do you
plan?
want to look at it, anyone, first? Nick? Scott? Joe?
No.
We're gonna leave it open. It's in the folder.
Motion to endorse?
We need a motion to endorse the A and R plan.
Do we have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
It is a vote.
Yeah. Sorry, they're not folded the way you want them.
You never,
Every engineer puts their signature lines in a different spot.
Anywhere there? Either side.
Either side.
It's today the 24th,
It is.
all day, right?
leave them open.
Thank you. All set, Mr. Chairman.
Next item on the agenda is a public hearing for 705. The applicant is Andrew Lawton, Impact Fitness, a request for a site plan modification under Section 9.4 of the Auburn zoning bylaws to amend the parking layout on property located at 314 Washington Street, Auburn, Mass. Map 42, Parcel 9. Is the applicant present?
Yep.
Do you have a motion to open the hearing?
Make that motion.
Second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It is a vote.
Peter Colonna with Cornerstone Engineering. Yeah, in the back over there, it's Andy. They did want to ask for a modification to the parking lot layout, basically. The overall footprint stays exactly the same as was previously approved, but they've had some issue moving one of the utility poles that are out there. This was the approved plan on this side, and the utility pole lands right in the middle of one of the access drives.
It's currently there, or it's gonna be?
It's currently there.
Currently there.
And they've had a lot of issue trying to get that relocated or taken down.
Is it because there's no other way to put it, that it would be in the right span, or?
It ended up being time and cost, both, trying to get that thing relocated. Originally, we had a new pole, it was supposed to be set out near the street and then underground over the building. But the plan is now to try to keep the overhead to that pole right there. So what we did was relocate, kind of reconfigure the parking around, to keep the existing, the approved number of spaces, but have to
Pull right in the island
kind of
there?
pull it around. Yeah, so we put an island right around that and kind of, we keep the main access and path through, and this is just kind of, instead of driving around and through, it's a dead end right in there. But there's a big space, kind of a little bit inefficient, but it gives you room to be able to maneuver in there. And we can keep the same footprint of the previous parking and keep the same number of spaces.
Nick, any questions?
No.
Scott? John?
Just a couple. Up in the northwest portion where you have the little rectangle drop down, up to your left, right to your left.
Over in here.
Yeah, right there where you have your snow storage.
Yep.
That's dropped down compared to the first drawing.
That should be. Yeah, the limit of the pavement is still the same. It looks like we have. So there's the approved. Hey, we gained a little bit actually of island space in there before this actually. So I guess the limit is actually reduced slightly. Sorry. This used to go straight across.
Right.
Right there.
So you're gonna have snow storage in there?
Yeah, there could be a spot where they could plow it now, so it's a little additional space where you could plow it up. If you were plowing from this direction, you could use it out in the...
All that other land right up to the property line, is that able to be
Yep.
held for snow too?
Yeah. Yeah, we figured all this kind of up in there off the edge, so we can push it that way.
You say when you drive in, it's going to be a dead end area.
Yeah, this, because when you come in here, before it looped around and went back out that way.
Right.
So now, you can come in, you can, pull up in here to do the parking. You'd have to do like a 3-point turn, basically a T-turn around.
So once you go up in there, you can't get out, but if that leg that John was just talking about, if you didn't bring it down quite so much and maybe
Okay.
gave up
A space.
a space there,
Yeah, you'd have to give up
2 spaces.
2 spaces. To be
you
able to
can't
pull.
use,
Actually 4 total. Well, 3 on that plan, but where it was cut straight across before would be 4 total spaces.
Yeah.
where you drop down, that width, that isn't enough to make a 24
We have
foot,
I have some
to
spaces
come up
this
and
way,
go
too,
around and come around, you can't do it?
coming through here.
Oh, yeah,
pole's right
oh, you got
there.
those spaces there, yeah.
Yeah.
prepping.
So you end up losing.
End up losing those.
Yeah. To be able to cut through. When no one's in there, so you can pull right through.
Right, so the other parking
Yeah.
spot. I got you. That's all I got.
Because that drop down, you're not gonna put curb around it.
I think we should have curb around that. We could leave it off.
Because if you're gonna use it for snow storage,
People are going to drive over if you don't put curb around.
Yeah, we could leave the curbing off in that area from, from here to here, this section.
then they could go, well, if you're
No,
asphalt,
there
no,
wasn't any parked there on the other side.
up and down.
Yeah.
He said there's nobody in there.
Yeah, if there's no one in there, you could. Most likely this is going to fill up first before any of this steps fill off.
I'm good.
Anything else, anybody? Any public comment? There being none, do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion, Chairman,
Oh.
sorry. Apologize. I had 2 comments, if you don't mind. First one was just a general question. This actually decreases the amount of impervious surface, does it not?
Yeah, if we do this little cutout, then it decreases it by that amount.
And you haven't, follow-up question is, you haven't adjusted the stormwater calculations, so now that the system is actually designed to hold more than what's
Slightly more,
provided?
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, we just left everything for drainage the same.
okay. And as far as the loop before, I remember that being the case so that a fire truck could maneuver. Now, I see the 24-foot wide aisles, which should
Yeah.
allow the vehicle to have a T-turn,
Mhm.
as you've suggested.
Yep. Yeah, the main goal too for the fire truck would be to, you know, do the pull through.
Sure.
But if they did come through, then there is still room up in there,
Mhm.
because this is about almost 40 feet in between those two, so there's a big space in between there.
Okay. Is there any proposed new landscaping on these islands?
No, we just hold what we had before, because before there was an island here and here.
Right.
So just what was allocated for those two would go in these.
Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
I just consider it a moderate change.
No?
Do we have a motion to approve?
Need a motion closed?
I'll make a
Motion
motion
to close the public
to
hearing.
close the public hearing.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, there's a vote. Now, motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the modification.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, there's a vote.
Thank you very much.
Good luck. Dick, we're 7:10, right?
Yeah, 7:16.
Okay, we have a 7-ton application, a public hearing. Packagug Farms LLC, a definitive subdivision plan for a 7-lot subdivision and construction of a new roadway with a stormwater management system located at 71 Curtis Street. This has been continued from July 10th, 2018 at the applicant's request. Is the applicant present?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, would you like me to give an overview?
Yes, would you
Where we are
please give an
today.
overview and review,
Okay.
so everybody, Nick and Scott and everybody remember where we were and when we started and how long it's been, and
Thank you. I just want to, before I get into the overall timeline, I just want to make note that at the original hearing in which this particular matter was opened, we had 3 members present, and one of those members is no longer with the board, Mr. Faber. So Ms. Steinhuber and Mr. Regan, having been the only 2 members here, it was responsibility of Mr. Brooks, Mr. Wren, and Mr. Lynch to review the minutes of that meeting in advance of tonight so they can become eligible to vote on the project. And I'm here to inform all today that all 3 members have reviewed the minutes. Mr. Wren reviewed the video as well and signed off on them all, and so they're all eligible to vote here this evening. So as far as the timeline goes, this dates back to December of 2014. Original application and plans were submitted to Town Hall for the subdivision you see before you today. Slightly different at that time. Through February, through the end of March, there was a peer review done by Graves Engineering, reviewed by the town engineer, and plans were amended.
2014.
2015 at that point, so we moved into the next calendar year. Decision was rendered at the meeting, voted on at the meeting on March 31st of 15 with conditions. The decision was rendered and signed by the board, or at least received by the town clerk's office on April 23rd of 2015, with conditions, of course. Significant amount of time passed, and the next event in our chronology was November 7th of 2017, when a public hearing was held by this board. We called for a public hearing to rescind the subdivision, which we invited Mr. Antonelli to the meeting to discuss why that project went quiet for the previous 2.5 months. At that time, the board granted Mr. Antonelli a waiver on the application fee to resubmit his plan based on the illness that had gone with his partner for the project. And so the applications and plans were received on April 4th of this year, 2018, after which a public hearing was scheduled on the 24th. It was the first public hearing we had on the matter. The project was introduced. We had an hour-and-a-half discussion between the abutters as well as the applicants here this evening. The plans since that date there's been amendments, there's been comments back and forth, and this is our second hearing on the matter after a string of continuances. I just want to make it clear that the purpose of the rescission hearing in its first place was because there were some conditions that were no longer achievable, that one of those being certain road improvements that were already done by the town, in addition to a handful of others that I'm sure we'll get into later. So what's before us today is to address those conditions, because those are what would need to be updated, and some additional changes made to the plan based on feedback we heard from the abutters the last meeting, and the applicant had made some amendments. And we'll get into those as well.
Those changes have been brought out by our engineering review people, or by, that you said we would need to look at and then possibly approve?
Correct.
Plan.
We'll definitely get into those also shortly, and I'd rather have the applicant speak on those. One of the things that was achieved recently was Conservation Commission approval. It was done on July 11th. It's one of the prerequisites of getting subdivision approval. So that satisfies one of those conditions. We're here today to discuss the emergency spillway relocation, which was done at the request of some abutters who were here in the past. Previously, there weren't houses in that area, and the channel was closer to a new house that's now existing. The applicant made the change to the plan to shift the emergency spillway to the north, and we had that reviewed by a peer review consultant, to which they were satisfied with the design. Did not impact any new calculations of stormwater or hydrology report.
Is that where there was one neighbor that complained down below on South Cove Road,
Correct.
that it was directed towards his property?
Yes, yes. So, that being the case, we're here to talk about that, and we're here to talk about roadway improvements by means of conditions. We also received some written comments from an abutter who's here this evening, and we also received some plan amendment suggestions by Mr. Regan. So those are the 4 items we're looking to discuss today. Anything else had been vetted and approved by the previous approval. So those are the things I'd like to focus on this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Which would you like to start with?
I'd like for the applicant to present.
Why don't you present what you have, and we'll go from
You
there.
wanted to give them an overview of the relocation?
Yeah, I'll tell you about them. I'm Mike Scott, I'm an engineer at WBA Design Group in Westboro. I'm not the design engineer, but Rocco called us as we've done some work in town and felt we might be able to help facilitate getting this through the project, through the process. This is the plan that was filed back in the early part of the year where the abutters' names were added to the plan. So this was the original plan plus new residents. Shows a spillway in the southwest corner that would flow towards, looks like the DD Realty Trust land or Thomas Townsend land. The town of Auburn owns to the west. The revised plan, which is on the screen, the spillway was moved up to be at the northwest side of the basin. It also puts it in more natural ground rather than running it down the berm, which is a sound engineering practice, shortens up the pipe and flattens out the run. All benefits all down below the pond, and it redirects the water more towards the town's land. In both cases, there were level spreaders, and that's the one was right in the southwest corner. Now it's, as you can see, farther to the north, farther up the hill away from our residential neighbors. And as Matt said, this went back and forth. The design engineer forwarded the plan, also communicated on their behalf with Graves Engineering, and they issued a letter or an email memo to Matt.
Mr. Chairman, just through the chair, you talk about how, because the spillway was relocated, it allowed for a berm to be built to help reinforce from going into the previous location.
Right, yeah, it steers it away, and they allows them to get, they're not as close in terms of construction, so it pulls the construction back, I mean, nominally 10 feet probably, but it helps. As I said, there's less likely, this is going to be built in more natural ground, whereas this would have been built in fill, so this would be more stable, and that's the practice that we employ and had suggested to the design engineer, because it also helped obviously move the point of discharge away from the neighbors, which is important.
Any questions, Nick, on this?
No.
Scott? John?
Yeah, on the relocation of the spillway, did McFarland make the change, or did you make the change?
No, Farley made the change and updated the plan.
We didn't put an date on the plan and re-sign it.
It is
It's
June
down
20th.
June 20th, 2018, it's down the bottom.
There's a, yeah, there's a,
Okay, I got it. The only comment I had is on the sewer. Drop manholes, impossible to build. You can't make a drop manhole 1 foot difference in elevation. The fittings just don't fit. A Y, a bend, and a 90, it's not gonna fit.
Sure, they may have to modify the slope of the pipe coming in.
That's all you gotta do is match the invert coming in the manhole. So you can just slope just a little bit and you're golden.
Unless there was some conflict, which I'm not familiar with, but
No.
that's
I don't think so.
easily fixable,
I
I
don't
would
see
think.
a conflict. I just don't know how your suggestion gets written into what we're talking about. I don't know the process.
I think it's for the chair, it's certainly something that we could consider as a condition because any contractor could see this as an issue also and make the change themselves.
What I'm trying to prevent here, if this passes, and you have an attempt, you order a manhole with a drop connection a foot apart, and it doesn't work. Now you have a manhole with 2 holes in it instead of 1. Now you
What I
two
have is a
boots
useless
instead of-
manhole.
Yeah, it's not ideal to have two holes, especially pretty
Right,
quick,
and
so.
then you can put a plug in the upper boot and all that, but that's just another maintenance nightmare, so we just put the one in the bottom. It's gonna make it easier for everybody. It's less expensive to do that anyway, because it saves you a cost of having a corn boot and a hole put in the manhole.
So it would be coming down here. I mean, it seems reasonable. It's not like the pipe is ridiculously steep or anything.
No.
So I don't know if they hit ledge or something, they were trying to keep it shallow, but I agree, that's probably physically impossible.
No, it is.
Yeah, if you're gonna build it, depending how they drew it. And they're showing an exterior drop, so all those components are just gonna be, they're too big, they're too bend.
Of course, you and Matt have already reviewed all the other comments I made on the original, not the original, but the last time you came. Correct?
Yep.
That's all I got.
Wendy? I'm all set.
So, Mr. Chairman, if it's all right, I'd like to address a string of questions and comments we received from Mr. Seliger, one of the abutters, that we received in writing, the date of our last meeting.
Why don't you do it, and then under public comment, he can speak if he wishes.
Okay. All right, so I circulated the questions out and some of the responses from the town engineer. One of the first questions was about the original subdivision decision. And he said, I don't need to read all of these out loud because they're in writing, but ultimately, question 1 was the definitive subdivision plan from 2015. The abutter was concerned that the board had said this was never recorded, which is correct. This is why the board scheduled a rescission hearing, which prompted the applicant to submit the amended plan in the first place. You know what, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd like to provide these to Mr. Seliger just so he can read them if he has questions about them.
His questions with the response.
I feel like it'll take up a lot of time if I do it the other way, so. I'll just- Yeah.
I know when we talked to this, there were things that we wanted to go through.
Yes. Yes, one of the other things to discuss was the nature of the amended determination from the Conservation Commission.
Sure, we went to the Concom 2 weeks ago, I think.
Yes.
3 weeks ago. Essentially what had happened originally was...
10.
Or 10th, so 2 weeks ago. The Concom reviewed the subdivision that was filed, but there was also a future build-out of the lots which showed the homes on the left side of the road, and I don't recall the lot numbers, 1 through 3 maybe. Yeah, 1 through 3. So the 3 that were adjoining, what's the name, Stone
Self-Hope?
Ridge?
Oh, this side.
Yeah, the left side of the road, sorry, yeah, the north side. So on Stone Ridge, there are 2 isolated wetlands.
Probably.
Well, this may be bordering, this is isolated. So there's a buffer zone here and here, and the Concom saw a plan that showed homes in this area, which puts the homes in their jurisdiction. The subdivision plan, it's evident there's no work in their jurisdiction. There's There's no wetland to the north within 100 feet, or sorry, to the west within 100 feet, although there is a wetland system on the town's property. And there is a wetland system over here to the west, so that's the east. To the west, there's a wetland system that comes down parallel to Curtis Street, but there's no buffer zone to the property. So the Concom, I think, looked at a plan showing homes, which is this plan, but they inadvertently referenced the subdivision plan and issued a positive determination saying you had to file a notice of intent. So we went to the hearing and presented this plan and this plan, and they agreed that this plan's in the future and the subdivision plan is free of any conservation filing requirements. So they issued a modified determination of applicability to that effect, saying that there'd be no, they issued what's known as a negative determination, which means they've determined that there's no work within their jurisdiction. So they've, rather than having to file a notice of intent and notify butters. So that was corrected, and I emailed Matt that this is the original. These don't have to be recorded, but actually, you should probably hold on to that because it's yours. But at this point then, for the road work and all the work associated with anything on the plans that are before you, there's no Concom filing. As soon as they go to build homes on the north side, provided they don't redesign the lots, then there would be a filing. But that's the determination they made 2 weeks ago.
This is a follow-up question. So the actual lots that show the buffer zone, if a house location were to be built in that would be a future filing after the road has reached the binder course.
When the lot was released, correct, yeah.
Where you have lot 1 and 2.
And lot 3, there's some buffer zone as well.
That's just not a filing that needs to be done.
So those are going to be
prior this
buildable
decision.
lots.
They're all buildable lots, they just, yeah, they're within the buffer zone too. They're a 100-foot buffer zone. The town, I think now with their bylaw, classifies that a resource area, but it's permissible work. You can build homes within the buffer zone, yes. And this is sewered, so there won't need to be septic system. It'll be a reduced footprint. And it could be that they're built without falling within theirs.
Yeah, this was my fault that this occurred. I submitted a conceptual drawing that we had done, and there was no need for it, and it just confused the issue. This is not like carved in stone that this is the footprint of the proposed houses. I guess we
But
were
those are
showing
the
off.
lots.
I'm sorry?
The lot lines are going
Oh, no, the lot lines are, they're carved in
Same
stone.
subdivision, but not the house, not the house
You
location.
can't pick and choose with them.
Yeah, no.
So,
But that was one of the conditions of approval, is to get Concom approval, and that has occurred.
Yes.
can see, all conservation approvals are here. And
At this point, that's all that's required for this board to vote on the project. When the future filings take place, that's not until binder course and the roadway's done, a bond is in place, and then the board can release the lots for individual construction, and then those are governed under building permits. And if it turns out the work's in a buffer zone, then a notice of intent will be filed for each lot, but that's not under the control of this board.
so, was there any other stages that you had?
The other thing to discuss is roadway improvements.
Yeah, and you're gonna bring up that, I'd just like to have it clear for everybody where we were, what's proposed, what they're gonna do, because
And
it's...
what happened in the meantime?
What happened in the meantime, because I know that, I think I read that where Mr. Seliger did something in anticipation that something else was gonna be done, and then that just went out like it wasn't, you know.
Yeah, because the DPW girls did some work up there, right?
Yes.
They did improvements to the road, yeah.
Okay, so I'll get into some of that stuff. So.
Why don't we, so everybody can...
Yes, so the original decision from 2015 called for widening of the public portion of Curtis Street from Stonebridge Drive for just 250 feet to utility pole 12. I believe what that is talking about is this area here.
A widening?
Yes,
No,
it's a little more.
it's way up.
It's, okay, pole 12 is almost midway through, right? I forget where pole 12 is. We're talking the distance.
It was up
that
where
goes-
you, yeah, it was up where your
distance that goes
cursor
up
was.
this way.
Is
Okay.
it up above Mr. Coyle's house?
Oh, way up.
The
It's
whole-
like
yeah.
four or five houses up the street from Mr. Coyle.
About here. So,
It
Yeah.
it really,
I know it's widening here.
I couldn't see it from my house.
Okay. And you're at 33 or
No, it's
71? 71 is the big parcel.
Yeah.
And right after that, where does it take the bend for Southwold?
Down here, much farther down.
Right there.
Yep. So what we're talking about so far is the widening that was supposed to take place, segment, we'll call it here, okay? The DPW, it was supposed to be done in unison with the DPW, who already had that road on an improvement list for that summer. The DPW, not sure how everything went down or not, but ultimately the DPW did the work, and...
Widened it,
Yes.
asphalted it.
Yes, yes. So the other piece of road improvements that was done at that time was done by a private landowner, that's Mr. Seliger, who's here today.
And where is that?
And he did improvements from approximately here. You can kind of see the difference in discoloration of the
Right
roadway
where the
here.
others ended?
Yes, this is in front of lot 71 and in front of number 70. It's a short distance into the frontage of 71, not by much, about 20 feet or so. Not a big deal.
Yeah, well, you can see the color change.
Correct. And I believe he paved the portion all the way through to a point somewhere here on
No,
South.
not all the way down, just to the end of the scaffold.
Just
the
the
beginning
end
of
here.
Southwold, yeah.
And then Dan Budio, the developer, did some additional paving
From there on.
this way. Okay, thank you, thank you. So,
That's a,
and that was all assuming that this piece was going to be done by the, everything in between was going to be done by the developer. So,
and the developer didn't, but the town did.
correct, the town
Town
and
did it
Mr.
all.
Seliger and Mr. Budio all did their improvements, and this piece was left.
No,
in its- in its-
I was,
Let him finish
Okay.
and ask to be heard.
And so that condition is no longer enforceable by this board. It's part of the reason that the rescission hearing was called in the first place. So that's
So
not
it's-
something we can add and carry over onto the next decision because the work's done.
So it's asphalted from way up down to where Mr. Seliger started his section,
no.
or is
No.
there a vacant piece? in
There's a
between?
piece in between the frontage of 71 that is still not improved. So
So-
that brings me to the next condition, which was a requirement of the applicant, was to improve the private portion of Curtis Street along the entire frontage of 71. With the intention of it being accepted as a town road, shall include acquiring rights to such portions of the private way from adjacent landowners. It's standard procedure to get a road accepted as a public way before it goes to town meeting. Improvements at the time consist of resurfacing a minimum depth of 1.5 inches bituminous concrete top course, constructing driveway aprons, to an approximate width of 5 feet,
What was the bottom? Did it give 2 inch and an inch and a half, did you say?
just 1.5 inches. This was resurfacing, okay,
Oh, okay.
at the time, okay? Raising manhole covers to grade, providing a berm on the westerly side of Curtis Street from the driveway of 70 Curtis Street to the southerly limit of work, and that is approximately here, okay, that berm, all right? In lieu of the work not being completed above 71, the town engineer has provided a recommendation that the entire frontage of Curtis Street be pulverized and paved along the frontage of the existing parcel to match the pavement joints to the north and the south. It's approximately 250 feet, I think it's like 270. And the and this is Mr.
Did you say
Glover.
pulverized?
He did. I got this from them 2:30 today.
Pulverized and repaved
Pulverized and paved along the frontage, yes.
of just 71?
Oh, it's just the frontage. It's the segment in between both that were completed already.
So, where did the town end?
The town ended at the public portion. You see this elbow here?
Yep.
That's the end of the public portion of the road.
Okay, it's about 250 feet from there down to where the other gentleman...
Correct, down here. It's a little less because of the...
It looks like it's
section.
asphalt above that, but
It could be asphalted
Correct.
now, but I mean...
Didn't call for, he didn't call for widening. He was just looking at, use the existing area.
so is that asphalted now?
Yeah, it's a street. I was, in the original decision, I was to go over it with 1.5 inches of paving, finish. To repave it, to go over with new bituminous berms.
So is everything that we had in the original plan, the latest one that was accepted, been paved at this point?
No.
None of it.
No,
So none, I thought he just
No.
said so.
No, I still have to do in front of the property.
yes. It's currently paved, but not anytime recently. It's
So-
asphalt, but it's...
You've got a, have you got a section that's base and top that Bill did, and then a section that he just has to put a top on, and then what did Mr. Seliger do? Did he put base and top, or did you just put,
There was only, the contractor only had a small area that he thought that would need to be grounded, so we just put a top on. Had manhole covers where it was sagging.
This up is done by the town. That's done. Okay. Mr. Seliger did from here down. Okay.
this is 71 from here to here, all of this.
So this is what's missing.
Okay.
And you said that's about 270 feet.
It's about 250 because the portion Mr. Seliger did goes up in front of the frontage a little bit. It was 270.
Where Mr. Seliger paved, is that a private road?
Yes.
Which would, if voted by the town meeting, become public.
Yes.
275, something like that. So this section that is not done, that has to be done, is the responsibility of the of the applicant.
If the board wishes, yes.
Isn't that what the DPW director recommended?
Yes.
Engineer?
And it's what you agreed to originally anyways.
No. No, I agreed to go over it.
Just doing.
I didn't agree to
And it- what-
rebuild a road.
Okay, so what Bill's saying he would want it to be is ground and repaved.
Correct.
So, ground, repaved, and I think you still have to put the 2-inch or 2.5-inch base and then the 1.5-inch top, so you'd need
Correct.
4 inches of asphalt on that
Correct.
270 feet plus having it ground.
Mr. Brooks, in a discussion I had with Mr. Coyle, the existing public portion of Curtis Street is not 4-inch of material. I believe it's only 3. So
Even what the town did?
I believe so. It was an informal discussion I had with him, and I'm not qualifying his opinion in any way. I'm sorry, I don't want to relay his opinion or speak for him. So part of his recommendation was for the developer to contact him to see what those specs are, and if the board wishes to be consistent with his recommendation, we'd have to fine-tune that in advance of the next meeting.
Well, it
Fair.
sounds to me like it should have been done at a point, and it didn't get done because they lapsed in their time and for whatever reasons.
Right.
So in between, the town did their part, Mr. Sullivan did something, and then in between, it got lapsed, so that I think the responsibility would lie with you to do, at least work with Mr. Coyle to see what he's going to tell you would need to be done.
Well, I won't say that. I've attempted to do that to no avail, but
You can have Matt arrange a meeting if you're having a difficulty, but...
what I had originally agreed to was to go over what was there. Okay, it was never my intention to pulverize and build a new road. Nor do I even have the financial ability to do that in the limited margins of this project. What I originally perceived what I needed to do was what you originally passed in the first decision, which was to go over it, put in new bituminous berms. One of the things I have discussed is from the line of the public road to somewhat past the entrance to the new road would be to pulverize. When you say pulverize, I don't know if you mean pulverize and reclaim or pulverize and remove.
They'll pulverize and then roll it,
and
and that's
reclaim.
a base, but you still have to
No,
put
they
your...
grind the asphalt right into the
Right in.
dirt that's there.
That's what I mean by
All together.
reclaim.
And that's now your
Reclaim
base.
is when they mill. That's reclamation. They just mill the top 1.5 inches off. And then they repave it.
Okay, but then
What you need to do here, clearly, is because for whatever reasons, and we don't have to get into that, you didn't perform, and now it's changed because the town did theirs and Mr. Seliger did his. You need to talk to Mr. Coyle and see what that's how I think it should be, if the other members agree. Need to talk to Bill Coyle and see what he would like you to do, and then if there's any questions, we'll ask him to attend the meeting, and we'll have you and him back here, and we can discuss it at this meeting as to what would be required. So but I think you need to at least talk with him, and if whenever I call him, I always get him,
I
so.
sincerely tried to do that. I actually got him on the phone, and I asked him the question about the pulverization, and he said, let me think about it, I'll get back to you. And that was months ago.
Why don't you set something up, Matt?
I'll do my best, Mr. Chairman. I do have a recommendation. Because of the time-sensitive nature of this being, having a deadline in mid-August, if this is going to be one sticking point, and I'd like to go public comment too to see if there's anything else, but it could still be a vote with a condition, and then the wording of that condition can be determined at the next meeting.
How wide is the existing road right now?
Because as far as, excuse me, it reads as 19 to 20 feet of variable width.
Well, figuring it real quick, at 24 feet wide times 275, if Bill was willing to allow him to mill it, the milling and just the cost of the paving is 10,000, roughly.
If he allows me to mill it?
Yeah. That's
I
Well,
can-
mill it, you gotta mill it, and then you gotta pave it.
Repave it. You're saying that cost would be about 10,000?
That's just the milling and the cost of the asphalt, not the labor to put it down.
Not putting it in place,
Right.
which is another, what, well, okay, $3 a foot or something.
You set,
That's doable for me, but to build a whole new 275-foot road becomes really a burden in this
well,
particular
don't hold
project.
Mr. Regan to.
I won't,
exactly what
I won't come after him saying you owe me the
They're
extra.
rough numbers.
But it gives me an idea.
So, Mr. Chairman, since
Okay, so
the road improvements are a matter of condition language. It's not anything that needs to be revised on the plan as is. That's because we're talking about,
But we need to set them by that meeting in August, or tonight.
I'd almost recommend making it a general condition with refined language at the next meeting.
Stated as it will be, it's a divine condition of what
Correct.
the road will be
Yes.
with completion and exactment when we come to the next meeting.
Yes, last time we did a decision, Mr. Coyle gave us some language for that condition. So I just want to make another thing clear. We are talking about a new public way that's going on to an existing private way. And we've had this vetted by our town council in the past. And that's why this new section of roadway has to become public, because you cannot connect a public way to a private way.
And the new section will be on what's currently Mr. Antonelli's property at 71,
Correct.
because it enters in there.
Yes, so the public way
So-
has to be extended in order to do that. And the only way that a board can make recommendations as such is by a condition of approval. So that's why we're talking about conditional language.
Because that won't be accepted for, how long does it take to get accepted?
It depends on what the board decides to do as far as the length of covenant for road completion at that time.
Well, I'm not gonna want it to be lengthy, myself. I would want it done quickly, if that's what the conditions are.
Bear in mind, Mr. Chairman, there's still an opportunity for the applicant to come in with a covenant, a performance guarantee. Assuming it's a covenant, it could be another means, but it's usually a covenant for us. And the covenant and the plan endorsement needs its own time frame too, which is a year, could be 2. We've done 2 in the past, but it's up to the board. And then from there, the covenant will set terms anywhere up to 3 years for road completion. I'm sorry, road to binder course before a bond is put in place.
You say the road has to be a public, it has to become a public road and approved, and that has to go through the town meeting?
At the end of the project's life, yeah. This is after all houses are built out. Yeah, that's,
But to do this road, we want it should be done in the beginning?
okay, so there's other process will work. If approved, the project would, one of the conditions would be to set a time frame in which the endorsement must be done, or the covenant could be put in place at the same time. Okay, whether it's 1
I mean,
year
is it
or
a
2.
thing where if we sign this and we agree and we condition it, and we have it in by the next meeting, that we can state that the road has to be done prior to the winter?
Whoa.
Not
whoa.
exactly.
Or is it that it's,
Not exactly. So, again, I'm just going to run through the timeline again. It's...
I just want everybody to know what's,
Right.
because it's always confusing, and,
It is. So, decision is approved, it's recorded at the registry, then he's got to come back, sign a covenant, and get the plan endorsed on a Mylar. okay? Our decision should have a condition on it that says have this done within a year or within 2 years at most, okay? Once the plan is endorsed, and the covenant will have an expiration date on it of up to 3 years' time. So at most, this could... and
Could be 0 to 3 years.
it could be 0 to 5 years. Because you have up to 2 years or just a year, depending on what the board wants to get the plan endorsed. And then that sets the covenant for getting the roadway up to binder course within a period of up to 3
But we're
years.
gonna endorse it, aren't we, when we, or is that after he brings it in, after we approve it?
Once we approve it, it has to get recorded. And then a covenant needs to be engaged by the applicant. And once that covenant is recorded, it gets referenced on the
That we
Mylar.
approve.
Yes, and then it's endorsed. The endorsement starts the roadwork timeline.
Well, we see what happened in the past with some of those that were lengthy and up in other areas. So I would really not want it to be more than a year or something like that. I want it to be on the shorter term, or whatever everybody thinks.
Mr. Chairman, I would advise against that. I think it's too strenuous for any developer to create a roadway of even of this length in 1 year. That's putting them to one summer. Anything can happen. I would do a minimum of 2, and possibly 3.
Yeah, because if you get all your excavation, your pipe work, and you want it to sit through winter, so that's a year
Yeah.
alone. And then the following year, you can put your binder down.
Right.
We just don't want it to go on for 30 years.
Right.
The
No,
last one.
but-
I won't be here.
Okay, Nick,
No questions?
Scott?
Just one question for Matt. Back to the Concom on the lot placement. We can condition release of the lots on Concom approvals for the placement?
No, we just, once a bond is in place, we can release lots. You can do it in a phase. It's best the board holds on to at least one and don't release
Yeah.
them all at the same time, because it's the only level of protection on both sides, really. But you can't put a restriction on it for Concom approval at that time. Once he goes for foundation permits, depending on where the scope of work is, that would trigger conservation
Okay.
through the building commissioner's inspection.
All right, and then just 73 they just did a top coat. So if the town were to take this over, why are we making this gentleman pulverize when part of the road wouldn't be,
I agree.
the same way?
Well, Mr. Coe recommended he comes to that point.
Yeah, okay.
That's,
The reason why it is because everything above that where the town it was pulverized.
Was pulverized?
Yeah.
Okay. But it still wouldn't be even the whole way throughout, so I don't know, I think milling and
above this.
keep costs down it just seems a little bit overboard to me. That's it.
John?
No, I understand Bill's point because if he pulverizes it, he brings it down to where Mr. Sego did his. And you have the new development down below, that is full thickness. His would be full thickness up through the town, the only short piece would be where Mr. Sego did. I understand what Bill's doing. So,
Okay. Is there any public comment? Mr. Seliger? Would you like to come up to the table?
Yes, please. I'll try to do this as fast as possible. We all worked all day and then came here. Do appreciate that. Confusing a lot of stuff, but the first one that I'll jump into is speaking to all the neighbors. Not a single one of the neighbors on, or the abutters on Curtis Street Extension, the private part, want that to go public. So I have this problem in my head where this project moves forward with the assumption that Curtis is going to go public because the abutters are going to say, yes, we can go public, but Daniels Hills, myself, no way on it. Mostly because...
So they would have to approve it, excuse me.
It's not that
Unless we
simple.
just do the very, very top part, which is the town decision, right?
It's a town road down so far anyway, correct?
The town road stops right there. The town owns that big property by the field, so there's the town owns the abutment, that first abutment part.
That little jog?
Above Daniel's house, above 70,
Yeah, it's up here.
yeah.
Okay.
So, but the main The main reason is really, if you look at how Curtis Street is laid out, one side of Curtis Street is on the steps of Mr. Hill at 73. One side, the other side makes Mr. Daniels' house basically the garage illegal because of the closeness, and I lose my trees. Okay, so that is...
Which one are you, Mr.
I'm
Sullivan?
the one that's right off the... I'm at the bottom. I'm the old house on the hill. That was a barn at one point, so that was raised. So it's very much, that's where the problem is on this, because the way that street is laid out, and we learned this from the one that was declaring the lands.
Post?
Post, yeah. Where it was, and all the thing is, that's where the problem is that's the way it's laid out. It becomes very problematic when that street becomes a public street, is because then all of a sudden the frontage and everyone's property disappears, right? Or can disappear at no control, shall we say. Now, I don't believe that somebody would pave up to Mr. Hill's house right there, but, that is how it is laid out there. And if you went down Mr. Post, one of the plans, he had a plan where the street curb was going right up to Mr. Hill's steps. Okay, so there is things, so that's one thing I'm absolutely in total confusion about, of how you could do a project where it's dependent on going, public, and the abutters on that street are not in favor of that.
Mr. Brooks.
Yes.
So I just want to make one thing clear. What we're looking at here, these yellow lines are in no way, any shape or form accurate, for one. We're talking about meets and bounds on lots that likely do not represent exactly how this line looks. I just want to make that clear before we talk anymore. As far as rights and access rights and taking over like any rights and appurtenances before a way goes public, we are talking about at least two direct abutters, but it's not a matter of the entire right-of-way, and we're not even proposing, the applicant's not proposing widening of the street at all at this time. So we're just talking about land that, if these lines were accurate, so to speak, he has ownership and not ownership rights, but access and improvement rights versus ownership rights. That gets a little more
You're
attorney
only
language
talking
to me.
about him improving what exists as
Yes.
a roadway already.
Correct.
Not making it wide and not going any further onto other people's property.
Correct.
I'm not talking about improving, just the fact of putting a new street into a private road is not legal.
We've
Right,
had-
so this project rests on the fact that the northern part of Curtis Street Extension would be made public at some point in time. Right, and that's the quandary that I have in my head, is, how you do that. So I would think that you would want to go public and then with a condition of improvement.
Mr. Chairman, we've had this vetted by town council already, and by means of condition that we're asking for, by asking for improvements to make these a public way, is follows case law. So this is the means in which it would be done.
But
It-
if he improves it down to where the paved line and where this gentleman paved, you just made a public road going to a private road, which is part of that development. I don't know how that's legal. I'm not a lawyer, but,
You're talking about the new roadway.
yeah?
Yeah. In order to do that, this happens a lot in subdivision law, and there's case law to reflect this, and town council gave us a 9-page memo on this 3 years ago. So ultimately, as long as they're improving that portion in front of it to a public way, they can carry out the project. What we'd suggest is obviously those improvements before they start building houses, and the planning board would be less inclined to release any lots until the roadway improvements are completed, or at least brought to binder court.
Yes.
And then a bond would be placed on both Rumi Circle and the road improvements for Curtis Street before the lots are released.
Is there a way?
It's farther down the line.
Is there a way to make the developer improve that road and keep it a private way? As part of
No.
the,
Well, you mean his subdivision as a whole?
no, the 250 feet right there.
If he were to keep that private, you can't build a new subdivision on a,
And
I
you
don't
can't tie it
know,
into a private
unless there's a
road.
homeowners association attached to it, and I don't believe that's the intent of the applicant.
What about what we talked about? The piece?
Just
the
the piece.
piece.
It's an option you could discuss with Mr. Coyle. He didn't seem receptive to that when I
Oh,
spoke to him.
Okay.
Build condos.
So, in writing, from whoever did the red, the exact words, "When it comes time for the private section of Curtis Street and Roomy Circle to be accepted by a town meeting as a public way, the developer shall acquire all rights, interests, and title of the affected areas of the private way from relevant landowners and provide all information in town." So, right there.
Directly out of town council's advice.
Exactly, so it's right there, it says it needs the relevant landowners to give approval.
Yes. It's a
And
matter
we
of,
know already that that's not going to happen.
it's a matter of different types of rights that I'm not qualified to answer. We're talking about access, improvement, and ownership that again,
That's going to get nasty. My wife again doesn't like this.
Even if those yellow lines were accurate for the right-of-way, it's way more than 50 feet.
yeah.
But regardless of that, very rarely do you see the full width of the right-of-way ever cleared on a town road, ever. Ever. They would just leave it the 19 or 20 feet it is.
Right.
It's my concern. I've already had Mr. Coyle thinking and doing nice, has already trimmed my trees in front of my house, which blocks the view going down to the highways and stuff. Okay, so that wasn't very good. So
Mr.
I say my point. We should move on. We're not going to get in the circle. So let's move on.
Just
on that.
because it's not
Okay.
pertinent to what we're
Yeah.
reviewing now, that's later on down the road, and the applicant, it's their responsibility
Okay.
to deal with that.
The other one, which I'm really stuck on, so we started this in November last year because it was told that the subdivision, the plan, was not submitted, okay, was never recorded. All right, so I'm stuck because that was the time when we said that we were approved the subdivision, okay. Now we're going back and saying, no, we have that document from whatever that May timeframe, whatever it was. Okay, so we can't have it both ways. We either didn't file it, so it never happened, or it was filed and it did happen.
I can answer that. So, here's the deal. With the recorded decision, okay, that's in the applicant's best interest. It's not a requirement by state law to record the decision, okay? As long as it's stamped in by the clerk, it's a binding document as far as the planning board goes, okay? Mass General Law or Subdivision Control Law does not have a time frame in which a plan needs to be endorsed or recorded at the registry between when the decision is rendered, okay? So the board didn't call for the rescission hearing based on an expiration like that. It called for the rescission hearing based on conditions that cannot be met. And the board would be less inclined to endorse a plan where there's conditions that cannot be met. So that's why we called for the rescission.
I was just responding to what was said at that meeting, so. All right, let's get down to the meat of it. So, looked at the plan in pretty good detail. I'm not a engineer for roads or anything, but I am an engineer and I have built facilities like the digital facility, Intel facility. I was looking at the plan, and one thing I always do is take the plan and go see what reality is. And the problem is that reality is not in the plan. Okay, and I'll go through, so I got out of work early today, took some pictures. Some basic things, the 200-foot view from the road. Because the road twists and goes down,
You're talking about site distance?
site distance, there is no site going south 200 feet. And I could pass around the pictures as to what it is. So standing in the street, which would give the best view, 200 feet is a little bit before this garbage can here. By the drawing, you can't see a car coming down. I parked my car down there, okay, right at the 200-foot mark, so you can't see it. Saying, okay, you'll stop a little bit higher on the road, and you can't see because you have the frontage in front of the existing house is raised, so you can't see, again, my car. It's an SUV. I figured that I would see something on that. And there should be a third, didn't print the third picture. So I have it's a quandary of reality versus the plan. You know, if it was a straight shot level, yes, you can see, okay? But the fact that it's a turn and on grade, you can't see, okay, on that.
Mr. Chairman, one of the first inspections that the town engineer has to do once the roadway begins is inspect the clearing of the right-of-way. There has to be clearing that's done so that site distance can be attained, and that's signed off on by the inspector, that being the town engineer, prior to subgrade preparation
So the house is going to be removed?
of the house.
That's the problem. The house is in the way from where you would be to stop a car safely in order to go see, down the street.
Which house?
Your house. So I went to the plan, stood right where I would assume, okay, stood up, so it's higher than where I would be if I was sitting in the car, and looked right down where I would see. And you cannot see because in front of the house it's actually raised. The steps go down. Okay, so what I really am saying is not want to pick on these little things in particular, is just that when I go look at the plan versus what I see and live by, they don't align. Right? If I go look at the water runoff, so we put 3 houses down on South Old Street. I'm not sure if you've been there and looked, but it is a horrendous mess as it stands right now. So, brand new road, 1 year, it's already falling apart, it's being undercut. In the last rainstorm,
That's Southhold,
that's Southhold, that's on the second house
and
driveway.
you're saying it's as a result of water coming off of
Comes off,
Curtis?
it comes from behind.
Because if it's just Southhold, then it's
No,
not.
it comes up from behind. This is the runoff at the end of that. Now, these are big stones that they put in the drainage. You will notice the stones were moved,
4-inch minus.
right, or bigger. The stones are moved and the water running down. So we're adding, again, water to the street. This is currently coming off of, mostly behind the houses, down to that part. And you add pictures of the rivulets coming down the stream. None of these plans have really taken that into account, with the exception of adding the emergency runoff, which goes in the town property and dumps right into where this is. Okay, 20 feet down, and then it goes straight downhill. And you can see, again, Southhold is just falling apart on that. The different plans that came with those 3 houses are just really destroying Thompson's property. All the water, this is another little catch basin, so it's underground pipes that come out of here, water comes in and goes right into Thompson's property. Okay, all that water is coming from the backyard, coming on down. Backyard is this property.
That's part of South Hole Road as well.
Yes.
That's a private way, right?
Southfield, no, that's public, I believe. Isn't it?
I'm not aware of that.
I don't know. The owner at the first house, when I spoke, he couldn't make it tonight, said that he thought it was public. But this is the best picture of the problem statement. So this is standing behind 73. Okay? Right where that white dot is actually on 70. You see that white dot on the right side of the picture? Go down, in the square of 73.
It's like the dimension for the lot
Right here.
line.
I was standing right
Side-
here,
side line.
okay? Taking the picture. And you can see what the grade is. Okay, and right now, there's tremendous water problems currently, putting houses, clearing ground down there, and you can see, again, the runoffs coming on down. This house has a retaining wall on it, that house doesn't. That house is moving downhill currently, right? And you can see what they're trying to do with some gravel to try to catch it, but you can see all the rivulets, that, lack of a better term, that are happening there. So when I just go look at the idea of the plan, and then look at really what's happening out there in reality, they're not aligning to me, right? And when 3 years ago, whenever we did it, my real concern was just paving the street, right? And then there was a couple other things happened. We fixed the culvert for Nicole's. That killed my trees in the backyard because it ran the property, the town property, which ran right into mine. All right, so now we started looking at where the water's going. Okay, and that's what I see. The Hills and the other people couldn't make it tonight, so I did speak to them.
Are you saying I'm trying to figure if it's all this water going down there as a result of what runs off of Curtis
Yes,
currently?
yes. It's so bad on Curtis that
Is-
the manhole cover actually, water comes out of the manhole cover.
Is what we're gonna do by fixing that section or whatever was worked out with Mr. Coyle, Mr. Antonelli, gonna increase that any more than it is now?
The way, speaking, I don't want to speak on behalf of Mr. Coyle, but the systems are designed to handle 100-year storm events, and they're not supposed to increase peak runoff. I believe Mr. Scott can elaborate further on the general regulation.
Because it looks like some of these conditions already exist as the water comes down that road. Is what I'm just looking at as us. under our purview is what, anything that he's gonna do increase that, because you have a detention pond designed on your own site,
Correct.
Correct.
okay?
To deal with our own
Water
water.
from
We're
your
not
road.
putting any water
None of that
into
water
Curtis
is-
Street.
should be going down Curtis Street.
No, it's all backwards.
The road. So bear in mind, I didn't design or permit this project, so, but I don't have the road profile with me, but the road,
It crests about halfway through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so
Sheet
there's a high point somewhere midway,
Right, you've got two
and then
catch
at the
basins.
entrance, right, and at the entrance to the proposed road, there's two catch basins, which then,
Send it back into
all the
the
drainage
property.
goes to the stormwater basin. So from the right side or south side of the road, I apologize, I think I was calling that west before, that's the east, obviously. From the south side of the road to the northern property line, which is the Stone Ridge side, all that water's from the land above, including the backyards of Stone Ridge, is all going to end up in this basin, which leaves less than half the land draining here, where presently all of this land is draining through. It's pretty much just a true side hill. There would be no water from Curtis Street. There'd be no water coming into this around the corner unless you had, a crazy excessive rainstorm, because the catch basin is only so capable, but it's designed to meet the standard. And then anything going down Curtis Street is going to continue down Curtis Street. And anything from here, meaning the south side of the subdivision, is going to continue to flow overland as it has forever, right into the backyards that people just built, so.
To Mr. Scott's point, we are actually decreasing the flow to the three abutters.
Yeah, there was a stormwater report submitted and Gray's reviewed. I looked at it, and my recollection is that there's a decrease and this project isn't subject to the state stormwater standards, so under the wetlands protection regs, they could actually avoid having to do that. It would be the local requirement to do that. The state doesn't mandate for a subdivision. Well, that's not true. This is 6 lots, but there is no jurisdiction, so actually I'll stick with my first statement. Under the wetlands protection regulations, this subdivision wouldn't be required to meet stormwater standards because it's not in the jurisdiction of the commission. But they designed it to meet those standards. It is big enough, it's more than 4 lots, so.
Seeing as now I live there, I don't witness what he's saying he witnesses. So-
I drove the site once just before we met, and I would agree that even 2 months ago or 3 months ago, that road was in sorry shape, and it's pretty clear it's a result of the recent construction, because the road beat the heck from construction traffic and all the land clearing they did, so it may improve as it revegetates. You can see in that picture that the last house is under construction, right where the problem is.
Except for this, the storm drain on the front of the, beginning of the front of the second house, totally clogged.
That's South Road.
Yeah.
Again, coming down the street, I did find a picture of where I parked my car as to where the 200-foot mark is. The street would be on the other side of that hill. Okay, so I just have a problem, and I was there when the guy from the First Engineering Company actually measured it out, because I liked his X6 that he was driving. He looked like he was 25. And so I was, stopped and looked, and it's not a great job. So again, please, none of this impacts me, right? I just want the street done. These are all the neighbors, and just my observations. We've got a lot of old neighbors, as you know. And the other thing that was on there, which is wrong on the plans, is that stone wall is listed as concrete and stone. It's just blue stone. It's in very poor shape on that. This part would not, I believe, be impacted because that is on the lot 1 or whatever is the lot that's not being changed. But this corner would be, that's on the next one. And somehow I think there has to be some type of condition to protect the Mr. Hill's house on that.
Mr. Brooks, it's not going to get past the building commissioner once the lot's released and they have to apply for a foundation permit. This might, if it even impacts the house location or not, but at this point for the subdivision, we're talking about lot divisions, not necessarily house placement and lot configuration aside from its dimensions. But things on the lot such as trees, walls, historical references at that point, or anything, even wetlands, the PVW, call it similar to the conservation notice with intent filing. Once the lots are released, there's other measures that need to be taken, and this wall could be one of those things that the building commissioner would like to remark on. But at this point in the stage, it's not for the planning board to condition in any way.
My last piece is not for the planning board, it's more for the town. The three houses we put in South Old Street, it appeared that the contractor there thought he owned South Old Street and the town land. So the earth movers, it's one of two that would have been there for a year on the new land that was purchased, less dirt. There is a dumpster, so one of these pictures that is actually on Thompson's land down the street. You know, pretty much a mess. The things were moved. I couldn't go down South Old Street Saturday. The contractor's there, so it gave him a little bit of peace of my mind.
Matt can maybe talk to the code enforcement officer.
Yeah, I think
or
it's
others
past,
about it.
it's done now, but I never go down that way, rarely.
Anything when you
Chasing
get
my
like
kid.
that, because it really isn't under us.
Yeah, no, I know. That's what-
Unless it's on some maybe subdivision or something that we're under our
So-
jurisdiction. But you should call the code enforcement officer or the
Like I
selectman's
said, this
office.
one, I don't usually go down that far. I do appreciate the time for the town. Like I said, it was the neighbors that I'm trying to
There's things that we
represent
can
here.
regulate and that come under our purview,
Yep.
and there's things
Yep.
that aren't.
On that, the only thing that I personally is that street. It's slowly getting undercut from where I paved at that point. And the only thing we could do to protect that. Your estimate was pretty good because I did get an estimate for my part, which is about the same footage, and you were only off by about $500. So. It may have gone up in 2 years on that. I do have a problem on the legalese part of this.
On the what?
The legal part of the putting the street in. That will be dealt with in a different way. My attorney, who I happen to live with, is taking exception to it, but we'll deal with that differently.
Okay.
Okay.
That's all on your own, and
Right,
you can
yep.
do whatever you choose. Okay, so, Matt, what is our next step? I think we do need to have Mr. Antonelli and Mr. Coyle sit or speak or get together to see what bill is going to be acceptable to.
Sure, and I'll just reiterate again, Mr. Chairman, that it's
You
a
can-
matter of
you
condition
can
language versus
Tell us how
any
you
sort
want to
of plan
write the
amendment.
condition language or what
Right.
we want to say here.
I do just want to thank Mr. Seliger for his comments and
Yes.
providing this stuff in writing for us. And even, I also want to kind of support one of the things he was talking about the catch basin that was full of sediment. I've also seen that on another occasion on my own, going down there when I was doing the hiking trail project.
Now, that section of
It's
South Old
not-
is in Auburn.
It's not part of this or anything, it's just making it known that I know the developer of those other three houses down there is supposed to be responsible for cleaning those out and just needs to be notified on regular. So anytime that's seen, I just encourage to let the town engineer know so that he can get on that.
If he's
I
working on,
would encourage the town engineer to go look behind whatever the first house in Southwold is. What I saw today was not good.
if the contractor's working on the street further down and the road pitches that way toward that catch basin, he's liable for a silt sack. I guarantee you that's in the Concom.
Yeah.
There were silt sacks
They're in there.
in there.
They're clogged.
You gotta
They're
clean them
all
up.
Clogged out, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And they're also,
It doesn't take much to
Asphalted in.
stop them.
yeah, they're asphalted in, so someone's gonna have to jackhammer them out.
Okay, what's the next step, Matt?
Our next step, Mr. Chairman, is I
Close
wonder if
the-
there's any other public comment, any other
Any other
comments from
public
the-
comment?
from the board members and such, and even the applicant.
Mr. Antonelli?
Just in reference to his concerns, one of the things that I had discussed was of just making the road public to past where Rumi hits Curtis, and the rest of it could stay private. I have no objection to that.
Again,
so
that's something that we can
with
condition.
Mr. Coyle.
Talk to Mr. Coyle.
Right.
So, we want to close the public hearing.
If you wish, yes.
Make a motion to close the hearing?
Second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It is a vote. Do we have a motion to approve with conditions?
Make the motion to approve the conditions. Matt, you're gonna spell those out for us?
Sure. I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed?
Any opposed?
John.
John.
We vote pass 4-1. We can discuss some of those conditions now, though, namely the construction hours, because we've had some changes to our last.
Let's,
All right, I just want to go over those. The original project had, 1, 2, 3,
that's in a tight neighborhood, so I'd like it to stay right to what we have on there.
okay. Originally, we had Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., with 8 a.m. to 12 noon on Saturdays, no work on Sundays or holidays. That was our original condition. I'm going to read off the rest of the original conditions as well. These are the ones that would still apply. Applicant should abide by all approvals and requirements of all other town boards and commissions. Applicant shall construct the development according to the aforementioned approved plans. The applicant shall conform to all requirements of subdivision control law, as well as the Town of Auburn Planning Board's subdivision rules and regs. And construction hours, as we just discussed. Subdivision is limited to 8 lots. That's 6 new with 1 existing and 1 drainage parcel. I believe that's,
With the retention.
I'll make sure that's accurate.
It is.
Okay.
Six.
Just make sure.
I only saw
As
6.
depicted on the subdivision plan. And the date then was March 25th, 2015. The new dated plan would be June 20th of 2018. Any further division of lots cannot be done without a formal modification. One of the conditions we had was cutting and clearing of trees with a diameter of 12 inches or greater would be prohibited, except where incidental to the construction of a roadway, utilities, drainage, houses, and driveways. The deed for the drainage parcel containing the detention pond should be transferred to the Town of Auburn by the applicant upon public acceptance of Loomis Circle and applicable portions of Curtis Street. Applicant to be required to contact the town assessor, obtain street numbers for the lots included in the subdivision, and record those numbers on the recordable definitive subdivision plan prior to the planning board endorsements of the plan. So we need those addresses on that Mylar before we endorse it. There was a condition on here that read the applicant must receive a letter of approval from the engineering division regarding the site stormwater hydrology report prior to endorsement. However, the plan was amended to channel all the stormwater away from Curtis Street and into the detention basin. Having spoke to the town engineer, he says that condition would no longer be required. I'm striking the widening piece of the public portion of Curtis Street we discussed previously.
That was already done.
Yes, because that work was already done. We will discuss, Mr. Antonelli, Mr. Coyle, and I will discuss how to word the condition for improvement, the private portion of Curtis Street along the frontage of 71 Curtis Street, and the method in which that would be done. Any future modifications to the approved plan, apart from any conditions set forth by this decision, would be formally submitted to the board for review. I do have 2 other recommended conditions. One would be something that we had been practicing in the last couple of years, and that's regards to performance guarantee. And that would read that the developer shall apply for and secure a performance guarantee with the Auburn Planning Board in accordance with section 3.3.12 of our regulations for the construction of the road known as Rumi Circle and installation of municipal services within 2 years of the date of definitive subdivision approval. So that means once this plan is stamped, you have 2 years to give us a covenant or a performance guarantee. Failure to apply for and secure a performance guarantee within the 2-year period shall result in the automatic rescission of the subdivision approval. I don't believe this. May I ask a question to Mr. Seliger? He might know the answer to this. Is this area in the Asian longhorn beetle zone for the town?
I do not believe so.
I don't believe so either.
No, we lost every elm tree, but
So I don't
Didn't
believe.
spray.
I
the
don't.
elms in 3 months, 2 years. Including across
The other
street.
condition I would.
Conditions that we will,
And the town
we
has.
weren't sure how we'd write them.
Sure.
We said we
I
won't.
sprayed.
Is that we
I have
I sprayed. You're talking about the
For the
gypsy
gypsy
ones,
moth.
yes.
The other condition would be, based on Mr. Regan's comments for the drop manhole, for that to be addressed at time of construction. We'll find better wording for that, but in addition to other comments you provided, just a strong recommendation on behalf of the board for consideration of the recommendations that you made on the red line plan that provided the applicant. So those would be strongly recommended to the construction manager at time of construction. just as best management
Is there
practices.
something else we talked about earlier?
Any additional conditions that I'm missing here
There
this
was
evening
something-
that have been discussed previously?
Because we can have through up till next week.
Yes, and we can review those at the
The
meeting.
meeting in August.
Right. I just want to go over the ones that transfer, the ones that are standard, and while the road improvements conditions is worked on between the applicant and the town engineer, I'll try to button up any others that have been discussed in the past, including any with the applicant, of course.
One question, Matt. Can we condition how long it takes him to do the 250 feet?
Not yet.
Because if it's a private road, he can go in there, if this is approved, strip the pavement off, say, see you later.
I'm gonna trash it during construction.
Yeah?
Right, the timing of getting it to binder course is the only timeline we have. And at that point, he's going to post a bond on it.
So the bond will cover Curtis and Runny.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Semicircle.
yes. In some cases where you might want them to do the private way first before they do the new road, you just destroy it while he's building it anyways. So that's why it's better to just do them both at the same time when you ask for the bond. That's after everything's brought to binder course at that time. So that's when we put a time restriction on, at the covenant before the bond is placed to get it to binder course. That's the only time restriction we can do. After that, it's on them to build the houses to get their investment back. Get the release, so.
I would ask that any members, on you, Matt, if you think of any conditions that we should apply at the next meeting, that we can add them in at that time, if you think of anything, and bring them with you, and we can add them onto the condition for the...
And I would absolutely, and I'm obligated to share any of those with the applicant as well. I don't expect anything that I missed, but just in case.
Would have been nice to know before 2:30 today about that.
That's what I found out, I know. But let's go over it with him and we'll see where that goes.
So, do I have a motion to approve with conditions?
We,
You already did that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's been done. Other question?
Okay. Next meeting, Matt, for...
Well, this is August 14th. I intend to have a decision drafted by then for us to sign. So any updates, I'll keep the board informed, and I'll continue working with Mr. Insnelli and the town engineer on the final conditions.
And the butters will be notified if there's anything else that...
Abutters will be notified of notice of decision. Once the decision's filed with the clerk, they'll get a letter in the mail. Standard procedure.
Thank you.
I hope it proceeds faster this time.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
There's things we don't have control over sometimes.
Yep.
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, we have a 7-11 public hearing. The applicant is Auburn Planning Board. Request to hold a public hearing to discuss potential rescission of definitive subdivision approval in accordance with MGL Chapter 41 and 81W and Auburn Subdivision Rules and Regulations, Section 6.3, for a subdivision known as Packagug Farm, 71 Curtis Street. Continued from July 10, 2018, per applicant.
Mr. Chairman, I'd recommend we continue that to the next meeting until the decision is signed by the board. After which time, once it's signed and stamped in with the town clerk, the board is required to rescind the original plan, which helps make the current plan active.
Okay, and we're fine with time on all of this?
Yes.
Do you have a motion
So
to
make a
continue
motion
this?
to continue to August 14th.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. This,
I'm just going to ask you to get this at the front row, because I got it on that AC. So you can hear us.
I was going to make a motion for that.
Shut that
what'd you
door.
put
I
on?
can't shut it, because it's an open meeting.
Can you
Unless you
close
want to leave that one open. One of them has to stay open.
I will leave this
Is there a
one.
law that has to be fully open or just...
This one's open, not fully, but it's open.
There you go.
We have a new public hearing, 7:15. The applicant is Masad Family LLC. A request for site plan approval under section 6.7 of the Auburn zoning bylaws for the expansion of a dealership parking lot and vehicle storage on property located at 24 to 28 to 30 Faith Ave, Auburn, Mass. Map 61, parcels 13, 63, and 65. Is the applicant present or a representative?
I have the representative, yeah. Zach from Existing Grade.
Do you know his name?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, just a short summary on this project. This is a new parking lot, part of Diamond's campus, if you will. This doesn't have anything to do with the prior subdivision of New Roadway. It's run adjacent to it, but it's not part of that approval. And it's also not part of the current site plan application for 54 Faith Avenue that we also have a public hearing for scheduled there. This is in fact a completely separate project. It's even a separate engineering firm. So, can we do the motion to open already?
Can I have a motion to open the public hearing?
Make that motion?
Second?
Second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
There's a vote.
Perfect.
Proceed.
My name is Zach Gless. I'm the engineer. I'm from Existing Grade. And to give a quick caveat, I know we are going to be continuing this because I have not received the review engineer's comments yet for this, but I at least wanted to get in front of everybody so we can start discussing it. The existing parcel to date does not look like this anymore. There's been a bunch of work that's been done out there. The three structures between 24 and 30 Faith Avenue, they've already been demolished, and the site's been kind of cleaned up a little bit to prepare for what's about to happen. What we were hired to do was to create a vehicle storage lot over here for Diamond Chevrolet so that they could jump across New Faith Avenue and store vehicles over here, similar to what Ford has just right on the other side of the church over there. So the existing site, I mean, as you know, is 3 residential lots that's been purchased, and there's been a considerable amount of work that's already been done to date over there. This is currently also in review with conservation, so we're still going to be dealing with those comments as well as we move forward here.
Does that property touch the wetlands in the back?
It does not touch them, but it abuts that little, so.
There's a wet area there.
Correct, yes, that's why we're going before conservation as well to get their input on this.
Yeah, show the replication area.
And the replication area we're looking at right there, that is brought over from the Waterman design for the relocation of the Faith Avenue. That's their replication that we're trying to work with for access to this new parking lot.
That we remember so well.
Oh, do you? So what we're proposing to do is create a 168 total space parking lot. Right up along Faith Avenue, we're going to have a one-way. It's an 18-foot wide travel way with angled parking, and then the rest of the parking spots will be 24-foot wide access ways with the typical 9x18 parking spots in there.
So up off Faith Ave, the travel lane is going to only be 18 feet?
Correct. There's, I don't know if it's easier to get up and kind of show it up on the plan here.
You want the plan or it's just the aerial?
The PDF actually, just so I can show where that one way is going to be. So what it is that this is the current Faith Avenue right here, and this is the proposed relocation.
New Faith Ave.
New Faith Avenue right here. So what we're doing is as you come in off the existing one, we're going to have a one-way travel lane out here, and then the rest of this parking lot will be 24-foot
Two-way,
wide, two-way
24s.
traffic. Correct. And what we're proposing to do with this to deal with the drainage is that the site is pretty constricted with where we can put a pond just because of the wetlands and the total size of the site. So that we're proposing a big underground infiltration, the big Caltech field, and then that will overflow into a pond right up in here that, you know, it's typical at that point that we have a little stilling forebay that will flow into that pond so that we can clean that water a little bit in further. That would have the surface runoff from this section of this new parking lot.
Do you have oil and water separators in there, in the parking lot?
I have a storm scepter, but at this point I don't have one proposed. I can easily throw one in there.
I would like to see it. Wherever we're putting new parking lots, we should be requiring it. Whatever would be, how many ever would be sized to that lot?
Sure. So I'm just writing this down so I don't miss it myself. And then one of the conditions is we are requesting a landscaping waiver. because again, it's a vehicle storage lot. It's not really a public parking lot to be used by the general public.
So they're all going to be inventory size spaces.
Correct.
Because those up in the front facing the diagonals on Faith Ave look like they're
Sure,
almost
right.
full size.
These are all full size to show what we could have over here, but the intent is going to be used as a vehicle storage lot.
So we should see we'd like to see what they're going to be with inventory spaces, right? Because
168.
if it's, so it's 168 in full-size representation?
In full size, correct.
Okay, and how many in inventory?
I do not have that number at this point. so I
Probably 1.5 times that.
I would imagine so about that.
What do you mean, on total inventory?
Well, he's got them sized as if it's a regular parking lot for cars to go in and park 9 by 18 or whatever they are. But if they're inventory spaces, they're usually
Small.
2/3 of that size, or smaller, tight stacked, and, you get,
It's got 300 cars on there instead of 168.
I think we always required that, or we want to see it.
If they're-
What is it, if they,
Yeah, if they're proposing stackable inventory, which that's not the case here.
Where these 3 homes were before, that was residential, correct? What is this zone?
It's a business zone.
Okay, just want to make sure.
And then
I think that whole little section, even off Sibley is,
that whole block in that area is all business. The limits of the parking lot meet the 10-foot sideline setbacks for the zone. And I guess-
my question is that you're showing it as a parking lot as if you were going to park cars there.
Yep.
Regular sized cars, whether it's for employees or whatever. But you're saying now that you're going to use it for inventory.
No, I understand.
So we would
I'll get that
want-
squared up for the next meeting.
One way, at least stated if it's, because then they come in and it's 168 spots and then you see them with 600 cars and say, oh, we didn't want that, But I don't think I would have any objection to whatever it is, but as long as it's spelled out as that's what you're gonna do.
Sure. And for the next meeting, I'll have that ready to go to discuss.
You get the oil and water separators, lighting, gonna be 0 at the property line.
Correct. I'm still in the process of getting the specific detail for the lights that we're going to be using, because I want to make sure it's in conformity with what the existing car dealership has, and I have to get that information still to do the, to be able to specifically spec out where they are, but I'll make sure that these lights are not casting onto
When you come,
adjacent.
yeah, we'd like to see a lighting plan.
There's not much residential around there anymore.
No, that's it, that was it.
No.
Yeah.
On your,
But it just goes into the Mass Pike entrance and all the way down below. It should be close to 0 at the property.
It's vegetated quite heavily across the street, even before the ramp. And then behind it is Prime Motor Group, and then to the west side of it is Faith Baptist Church, which has their own side lighting.
Well, what we do is we like it 0 at the property line, it's a
Sure.
regular thing, and then we allow security lighting and stuff like that that goes or kicks off after a certain
Yep.
time.
Okay.
Through the chair, I just wanted to ask the applicant if you could discuss some of the comments that came up with DCG.
Sure. Some of the, because we did have the DCG group meeting last week, and some of the items that came up was the fire department and to do its own analysis on their fire truck to make sure it can navigate through the parking lot, which I'm in the process of working on still. I have to get specifications for the vehicle that they require for that, but I'll make sure that this does comply with that. One of the other things was a potential for a chain link fence around that pond. As it stands right now, on this one access tying into the new Faith Avenue, I have a 3-foot wooden guardrail to prevent any sort of vehicular access into that pond, but I'll look at securing the perimeter of that.
Yeah, we like it to be able to be locked.
That's what happened, Mr. Chairman. I relayed that the planning board typically likes the chain link fence on their detention ponds. However, in this case, the chain link fence might inhibit sight distance for that driveway. So this is a situation that we don't usually run into.
I mean, I can propose taking this 3-foot wooden guardrail and securing it all the way around to at least create some sort of buffer.
I'd still like to see a chain link fence
It's
where
not high
there's
enough
a
to
detention.
keep a kid out.
You don't know. I mean, there's people that are gonna be with their kids at the dealerships and stuff, the kid could... Where's the driveway that you're saying it obstructs, man?
Talking here on this is almost what is 7, 8 grade
One
there.
right at the corner.
That's the one that's gonna be in the
Oh, okay.
new
I'm
Faith
looking at it
Ave,
as
right?
or a
That's the
treat
new
area or
Faith Ave.
something, because it's darker.
So a couple of questions that came up included the location of that driveway. And unofficially, the civil engineer, Joanna Paquin, had inquired or had curiosities about it being potentially relocated or something, and just encouraged dialogue between Zach and the town engineer. I don't think any resolution has come of that yet or anything, but as part of it, it triggers the question of how does this affect the approved subdivision with the new means of egress onto the subdivision plan that was already laid out? Does that mean that they have to come back and modify their subdivision plan now that there's a new access onto it? That is also proposed, because both of them are still proposed. So it raises another question at that point. So I think that might help, that concern might guide Mr. Massett into whatever decision that he would like to make on this project. Again, it still needs to be vetted, peer review. Town engineer still has some outstanding comments, and there's still a lot of collaboration that needs to be done.
There might be a type of fence that's a little bit bigger sections than cyclone fence, but give you a little better sight distance. Look into that. But something, we would want something that's pretty
Okay.
firm. The kids,
I can definitely address
it's
that.
got to be, pretty tight.
Through the chair. I'm of the opinion too, as far as the landscaping goes, if this is actually going to be used as a way to, kind of show off these cars that are,
That's what the diagonal's for.
yeah, then, there's got to be something that, I'm not of the mind to waive entirely, the landscape plan.
I was looking at the same thing. I could understand the other side, because you got the wetlands, you got the drainage, but...
You mean the left side, Scott, right there?
The
that
right
comes
side,
back
but
The
up.
the
right
top
side
side.
coming down the...
Yeah,
On the west side, you still get the Faith Baptist Church there as well.
Yeah, it is, yeah,
I'm sure they're not gonna wanna be looking at a used or new car park on it.
yeah.
Those-
So,
I do have a couple of questions on the drainage. Out of your recharge system, I'm kind of confused. You have 2 8-inch coming out, one going to a somewhat a retention basin, the other one going to the big retention basin, but out of the little retention basin, you have 2 12-inch going out of that into the big retention basin. The 8 inches HDPE and the 12 inches RCP. I don't get it.
I think the 2 was the typo that I'll correct, because there's just supposed to be one pipe connecting the 2, we had to try and find some more area to create a pond for storage, so I had to create another little pond where I could get it and then connect the 2 so that they act as one system at this point. So that there's not 2 pipes coming out of that, there's just one, but I'll get that corrected and resubmitted.
My question is, you have 12-inch coming in to the field, correct?
Correct.
And then you have an 8-inch going out, and another 8-inch going out, and then a 12 off the 8. Why not just have a 12, a 12, and a 12?
I can speak with the other engineer I collaborated with on the drainage and kind of get his input on why
I'm
he
just
did that.
curious.
No, yep.
And you have the label as HDPE, which is usually welded pipe together, fused pipe, unless you're planning to use like ADS. Well, there isn't a detail in the pipe in the back yet, so.
No. I'll get some clarification on that for the next meeting.
Is there a standard by which, when you're gonna put one of those Coltech units into the parking lot, that do you have to do like soil testing first to make sure that it's not wet, not high groundwater, that
And we-
wouldn't accept it
Yeah,
when it went in?
And we did some park tests out there, some test pits to see where groundwater was and what the soil was. And I know that that's also part of what the review engineering is reviewing as well, to make sure that he agrees with what we found out there. But we did do test pits within the area of where that Coltech is.
Pretty sandy.
Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, and probably some clay.
A little bit once you get a little deeper down. And then you use the soil analysis and the hydrologic soil groups to, do the infiltration of those.
All right. Nick, anything?
None additionally. I mean, just kind of like to Wendy's point too, is I wouldn't want to walk out of the church and just see everything. So I would be more inclined to have landscape out, at least that side at the very
A boundary
Yeah,
landscaping
boundary
plan.
landscape.
It's kind of a perimeter planting.
Perimeter landscaping plan, bring that in and we'll look at it. The lighting plan, and inventory spaces.
Mr. Chairman, to Wendy and Nick's point, I also brought that up with DCG, only in that spot too. Still suggests that the waiver is requested landscape plans. The full landscape plan is going to require it throughout the site. That's far more than is needed. If they were to show the plantings on one of the other sheets, I would be opposed to that.
I mean, I can create another sheet for just kind of street plantings and
Well, perimeter, what we just said. Perimeter plan, not all internal and stuff like
And the
that.
waiver would still be a relief of the standard landscape requirements.
okay.
Because, I mean, you're creating this huge blacktop, landscape with nothing,
I think
I don't
it's,
know.
North and west side.
Kind of like they did at the gas station.
what,
Yeah, they threw up some arborvitae's.
that,
Yeah, they all died.
I didn't like that over.
Regions.
No. We could have got Sibley Street done there and everything.
Yeah.
Got nothing.
So,
Okay, inventory spaces, so landscaping, snow storage.
We have a couple places that we can push it
Did you
at.
mark it on the plan?
I have not, but I'll get that addressed for the next one, snow storage.
We've got good returns coming out of any of those driveways, can be left or right.
It's now. There's actually a lot of asphalt that's already there.
Most of it's gone.
Yeah, there's a pretty large shared
Was.
kind of communal driveway, and it's in the process of getting removed.
It's pretty much all gone already.
Yeah, it's been cracked up and pulverized, and
So, can you show the PDF again, Matt? About the sight line coming out of the driveway on
on the corner.
the corner.
That's what I thought the
Well, that's
engineer
where
was,
that chain link
was gonna have
comes
as a
in,
question,
around
is coming around
Detention pond.
Faith Ave right there.
Right.
There's no sight distance.
Is there a way that driveway can be moved to the bottom right corner of that lot?
I'd have to cross the level.
that's kind of where we put it where it was, because there is that wetland replication. I know that was,
That's all
It was a
wetlands
huge
there.
sticking point.
There's a bridge.
and the road is, it'd be difficult to tie into right there and cross those wetlands without trying to fill in that whole entire area. And
It's about bringing it back around the corner before the detention pond.
This side.
Yeah.
It's a
And that's gonna cut into the display
Sight
area
line the
for
other way.
the stock.
Right.
Well, then they could put more display where the road where the driveway would have been.
Right.
You can always make the one driveway on the left the out and the other one the in.
That's,
Not that anybody's gonna obey, because nobody reads anyway, so.
Yeah,
I'm
I've
glad-
seen that on the O'Reilly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'm glad the board's talking about this. I believe this was essentially what what Joanna Paquin was referring to. That if you were to move the driveway on the opposite side of the detention pond, you would get more display parking where this driveway is proposed. Again, all things that need to be worked out through collaboration, so, but
Okay.
it's consistent recommendation.
True.
Yep.
So, public comment.
Any public comment?
So my name is Brian Lake. I'm representing the Faith Baptist Church. We're actually thrilled to see this happen. We're surrounded by cars today, at least on two sides. So this is really nothing new. We're actually, we have been, Mr. Massett's been kind and has allowed us to use his parking lot at certain events when we have more than we can handle. Prime also has been very kind. We're bursting at the seams at this point with our current property. We are actually looking to move the church to a different parcel in town. We have figured out where that is yet, but we're working on that. But we certainly have no concerns at all with this plan here.
Well, I'm showing it's done, it'll be nice.
Yeah, it's interesting being in the middle of the two of them. Gives us opportunities to check out what the new inventory is.
Make a motion to continue?
Just one second. Anything else, Nick? Scott? John? Wendy?
How much time do you think we need for continuance in order to discuss our August schedule?
You want to go to September, first meeting in September, or do you want to have it in August?
I'd prefer to have it in August if possible, because I know they're kind of starting to
And
get
we
itching
haven't
at the
set
bit here.
August date yet, have we?
We're still going to have a meeting on the 14th. It's just a matter of whether or not we're going to have one on the 28th. Usually we have only one meeting in July, one meeting in August, but so far we've had two in July, and based on demand. So
Right. We said that in the beginning.
that's everyone's last week before school starts. It
Yeah.
might be the week.
Maybe the weekend.
Yes.
So it
Will
could
we
be
be
tough for
ready on the
everyone.
14th?
Again, a lot of this is going to be dependent upon when I do get these
You wanna wait
review
till the
comments back from
29th?
the engineer.
Well,
Uh,
we'll continue it to the next meeting, and
And then
then
if
it has
we
to
have
be.
to
If I don't have the comments by then, I can let you know as soon as possible so we can
Yeah,
address
I'll
it.
try to give him, Matt, at least a few days.
Oh, absolutely.
2 or 3 days.
I wouldn't call them a day of, and that's not very nice to do.
So make a motion to continue the hearing to August 14th?
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Seth, did you give a payment to Sheila? Did the check come in for the period?
Yes, after the DCG meeting, I had delivered that.
All right, great. Let me just go to this continuance.
Perfect.
26, 28, and 30. Is that right?
It's a lot of them.
Let's just
No,
call
they
it
don't.
26 through 30.
Yeah, 24th through 30, by the way.
Friday, Monday, Tuesday.
It's all
No,
And now
I'm sorry.
Fridays, is it?
100. One of the people at the time, they said, I get a guy that he'll come up for free and evaluate it and tell you what you get. This is good, does it? Yeah, you can It's unbelievable. He's gonna work for everything, school system and everything.
Yep.
Whoever it was I was talking to, and I told him, I must have said it 5 consecutive times, he'll come up and do it. Tell him when I have it evaluated, at least to see if they're getting the right evaluation. Those
Long one ahead of you.
people
Oh, no problem.
He-
All right, take care. Thank you very much.
Do something at work, they did it, $1.5 million. They fixed it.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize, I missed something on our Faith Ave item. We hadn't voted to accept the waivers. They're consistent from the previous plan. The waivers hadn't changed, nothing
Consistent
had
from
changed.
the previous plan of what?
The approval plan from 2015. Nothing had changed, I just want to
On
be
which-
consistent. Curtis Street, sorry.
You said Faith Adams.
Did I apologize, I'm sorry, I meant Curtis Street. This is the same waivers that we had granted in the past. I just want to reflect them straight from the decision. It's a lot easier than reading them off the request. This was for section 3.3.2.1Q was a tree plan. The same thing with letter T, staking of the road and center line.
You say tree plan for inside the subdivision?
No, they had to.
12-inch, mark all the 12-inch trees or nothing over
Right,
12-inch could be.
before approval, they would have,
They were supposed to tag them so they can't cut them and then say, oh,
They had to tag them regardless. It's a locating requirement of our regulations, which we waived in the past. We waived all these before, I just procedurally would like to do it again. The other one was for the right-of-way width, the standard is 50 feet, they asked for 40 feet, which we granted. Sidewalks, section 4.11, that was to have them on both sides of the street, we allowed it on one side of the street. The dead-end street, section 4273, this is supposed to be an extension of a right-of-way at the end of the cul-de-sac onto the next property. But before that was post-property, and he wasn't interested in the extension in the first place. The land is quite landlocked. Now we own it now. Problem is, it's still a serious wetland.
Then we should look for that
Well,
extension of a right-of-way into our own property.
Regardless of the change, I still wouldn't recommend it because that land is absolutely useless. So,
Is it landlocked otherwise?
it is landlocked, but it is unbuildable by all means of the imagination.
Drainage pond if you accept it.
Yeah, the drainage from the
No
golf
need
course
for it,
goes
yeah.
right through. It's not,
So I make a motion to accept the waivers?
Yeah, that's all.
Okay.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed?
Needs to be consistent.
Yep.
Thank you. Sorry for missed that at the
You opposed, John?
Yep.
Just
Okay.
formality on the next one.
We have a 720 applicant, Masad Family LLC, requesting modification of site plan approval under section 9.4.1 of the Auburn zoning bylaws for parking, landscaping, and site layout reconfiguration on property located at 54 Faith Ave, continued from July 10th, 2018, at applicant's request.
So, Mr. Chairman, I did receive a draft covenant signed by David Massett for the subdivision part, which is separate from the site plan approval. In order for this to proceed, the subdivision stuff has to be finalized. So I did get the draft covenant, sent it off to town council. Town council recommended that we don't sign it until legislation is finished,
States to a state.
just in
approval.
case it goes the way we
So
don't expect
the
it to
reason,
go.
basically, for the continuation is just we're waiting for the state approval.
Same reason, yes.
Do we have a motion to continue this to August 14th?
Make a motion to continue to August 14th?
Second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
It is a vote. Member discussion, associate member, we've been through that before. August meeting schedule
We have
so
an
far.
application for an associate, by the way.
Okay. August meeting schedule, the
Another guy?
14th.
I'm outnumbered.
Are you going to talk about the application?
No, it's just, we have an applicant, that's all. Just want to let you know, it's being evaluated, so.
August meeting schedule, so far it's only the 14th. We'll discuss it on the 14th if we need to have one
Yes, sir.
on the 28th. Minutes of 7/10/18.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of 7/10/18.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Vote. Next meeting, August 14th. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Make the motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.